We can get started if you'd like, just because I know both of them are coming. They both reached out. I have not heard from Lisa. I'm not sure what her status is.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for coming. Welcome to the September board meeting of the Jefferson Madison Regional Library. Let's take a quick look at the agenda. First thing is to do the remote participation confirmation, I believe, which I'm not sure I can make the motion.
So I did prepare a sample for the board because this is going to be a new thing that every month you all will have to vote on as long as there's somebody participating remotely. So the only remote participant that I'm aware of today is Tony, who would be choosing option A. So somebody would need to make the motion, read it, and then read option A, be approved.
Would somebody like to make that motion?
What's Tony's last name?
Townsend.
I move that Tony Townsend's request to attend today's meeting of the JMRL Board remotely due to A, temporary or permanent disability or events that prevents their physical attendance be approved.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Great. Thank you, people. I guess I now have to work for the rest of the afternoon instead of taking the day off. Oh, well. First thing I want to do is take a look at the minutes of our August meeting. Thank you, Sierra, once again. And any additions, comments, corrections, suggestions?
Can I just point out that there was a change between the draft that went out and the version that's in your handouts. We just made an amendment to a motion that Mike abstained from to make it clear that there was one abstention and the rest were in favor votes. So thank you. Somebody, I think Alita pointed that out, yeah, to Sierra. So that is a slight change.
Do I hear a motion to accept the minutes as amended?
I think Kathy moved.
Thank you, Kathy. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Next up is our period for announcements and then public comments. Do we have any announcements?
I have an announcement. I'd just like to remind everybody that the Friends book sale is next month, the week of the 15th, and members night is the 14th. So put that on your calendar. And they've upped the limit for members night purchases, $75 limit. October 14th, members night. Next day begins the open.
Thank you, Wendy. I hope to see everybody there. What I call the book recycling event. I buy the books at the book sale. I bring them back at the next book sale. Then I go buy some more and recycle those. So it works out very well. All right. Time for public comments. I'll remind folks if they'd like to make public comments. I don't know if we have any in-person comments or if we have folks online. A reminder that public comments are limited to 5 minutes. If you're also, for those folks who might be listening in, if you're want to make comments and can't attend the meeting, there is a website now, jmrl.org/library name change, and welcome all your comments there. I think we have one comment. Could you say your name and where you're from, sir?
My name is Chris Winter, and I'm from Charlottesville, but I reside in Albemarle.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a graduate of the Miller School of Albemarle, which shows the roots that I have in this area. I then served in the 3rd Infantry Division, defending the Fulda Gap in Germany in case the communist East Germans invaded the West. I come here today in order to voice the opinion of true freedom-loving Americans This attack on our country and the good names of Jefferson and Madison will not be tolerated. This cowardly aggression is a laughingstock of Central Virginia. All people of goodwill see this issue as a farce and a lie. Only those ignorant of liberty, intentionally or unintentionally, fall for this calumny and perversion. All Americans should actually fall to their knees in gratitude to these famous and prominent men. I encourage the former residents from behind the Iron Curtain. This term was coined by Winston Churchill, another great man, in his speech at Missouri in the US, March 5th, 1946, quote, "The Stettin from the Baltic to Trieste in the Adriatic, an iron curtain has descended across this continent." He's talking of Europe. Churchill wanted the Americans to enter Europe through Italy in order to stop the communists from annexing territory in Europe during World War II. FDR refused and chose Normandy instead, sealing the fate of millions of Europeans to misery, suffering, and oppression by the Communist Party of the USSR. Those who were liberated after the fall of the Soviet Union and have moved to our great country have been warning us about certain trends happening here for 20 years. Removing war monuments, cancel culture, violence used to intimidate those who think individually, identity related to groups other than the melting pot description of American identity, brainwashing children in public schools behind the backs of their parents, and usurping parental authority in deeply personal issues only related to the family. We should all listen to these former Iron Curtain unfortunates who carry the wisdom few Americans understand. We will no longer tolerate the intolerable acts of this woke, leftist, modernist dribble born from ignorance and resentment. We should all fall to our knees in gratitude to God for these men who changed the world in such a monumental way. I urge you to learn history of our great nation and teach it to your progeny. So they'll be able to discern true Americans from imposters. If you think you are an educated person and you have not read The Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, you truly have no defense against the attacks of the country we see now. You will read of torture, scandal, calumny, institutional injustice, cowardice, starvation, and many other deeds carried out by monsters who called themselves communists. After reading the Gulag Archipelago, you will no longer be able to stomach any defense for socialism, communism, or elitist utopian plans. Truly, we have much more important issues to address than the criticism of our forefathers by ignorant and short-sighted unfortunates. Read, and read some more. But omit the dribble and hypocrisy of those who refuse to mind their own personal business, who fail to mention the historical perspective of these men's outstanding contributions to world freedom and personal responsibility. No, these unfortunates want oppositions to stay silent, so speak out even more. They wish to stamp out freedom of speech, freedom of religion, just as the communists did while I defended against them and their encroachment during the Cold War. Remember this, as Ukrainians were starving by the millions under Soviet communism, posters were put up in Ukrainian villages, urging parents to stop eating their children. There is no defense at all for those who promote communism. Why do I bring this up so much? Because these tactics used by those who disparage our founders were used by the monstrous communists. Drop this issue now and forever. You are contributing to the degradation of our lovely town.
Thank you, sir. Your 5 minutes are up. Thank you, sir. We appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
David, do we have anybody online?
There are a few attendees online. If anybody would like to speak, please use the Zoom raise hand function, or if you're on a phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand now. If anybody in the audience would like to speak, you can use Zoom's raise hand button, which should be at the bottom of your screen or your phone app.
Going once. Going twice. Okay, thank you. All right. Next up, under continuing education, a couple of months ago, we asked AJ to put together the handy infographic that would explain the budget to those who perhaps need an understanding of same. So AJ, up to you.
Thank you, everyone. We'll start the presentation by saying we're working on the infographic, but I will explain the budget to you. So David will pull that up. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you just for a little bit on JMRL's funding sources and our budget cycle. For those of you who might be new to this process, it's exciting. All right, so next slide, David. All right, so what I'll be talking about today is our operating budget. We have a materials budget, an equipment budget, Friends of JMRL, which is not our organization, but they provide funding to help support the library, some federal aid, and then I put grants here. I won't cover a lot of grants. What we normally get in from grants is miscellaneous programming grants that some reference librarians and things like that, or children's young adults will apply for throughout the year. But those are normally come up to you all, and you all approve those on a case-by-case basis. So yeah, next. So operating budget, next. Okay, so our operating budget comes from the jurisdiction. So from Charlottesville, Albemarle, Greene, Louisa, and Nelson. And what comes from our operational budget is normally is two different things. Our jurisdiction expenses. The jurisdictions pay for their buildings, their libraries, and their library staff. And those are based on jurisdictional needs. So each jurisdiction decides what libraries are going to be where they are. And so they have their own process to determine how branches open, things like that. So jurisdictions pay for their libraries and that library staff and their operating costs of that particular branch. Jurisdictions also pay into regional expenses. And so that's normally our administration, our technical services, those who prepare all of the materials, our books and things like that, as well as some of our reference staff. When people call in from different jurisdictions, they all kind of come in and feed into Central, I believe, right? And so jurisdictions pay for our reference services as well. What they pay and the percentage they pay is based on a 3-year average of circulation use. So those who use the most pay the most, and so on and so forth. So that's what makes up our operating budget. Next slide. I'm gonna go real fast so that way I get through everything. Our materials budget. That funding source is actually the state of Virginia. It's governed by the Library of Virginia, and that's an appropriation from the General Assembly. The way that they figure out what, out of all the libraries in Virginia, who gets what, it's a formula based on local efforts. So that's how much money goes into the library from the jurisdiction. I think they'll fund up to 40% of every dollar that goes in from a jurisdiction with a cap of, I think, 250,000-ish. Okay, so yeah, it caps. It does stop. I just can't remember the number. Population of areas served, so per capita number there, and then the actual square miles of what's served amongst the jurisdiction, and that's their own formula. What we get from our materials budget is the materials. So actually all of the books that you see, CDs, all the DVDs, all of the things that make up the materials of the library, as well as our databases, all come from this. We also have a library supplies budget that we take from that. I think our materials budget is from around 850,000. We take 25,000 of that out, and we use that to prepare all the materials, book tape, covers, labels, all the things that come to make the materials work. And so that all comes though from the state. This has not been fully funded for quite a while, but we got a bump that we didn't expect this last, the General Assembly, the last budget the General Assembly approved. We did see a bump in our materials budget, so we're grateful for that. Yes, Mike?
Am I correct in recalling that in the formula, number of jurisdictions composing the region is also one of the factors in the formula?
No, and I have that in my notes, but I don't think it's a number of jurisdictions as much as it is the actual coverage.
Okay,
And then
I thought it was both,
population.
but thanks for correcting that.
Yes, sir.
And we'll say that state aid, I just learned the other day, from 3 years ago, it was 50% funded to now closer to 75. So there've been a lot of good progress in the last few years on that front.
Thompson, do you have a question? Okay. So then our equipment budget, that funding source is our fines and fees. And so if there's like printing, or if there's a damaged book, or if there's a late fee, those all go into our equipment budget. Regional expenses that come from our equipment budget is our own fees, like our credit card processing fees, our collection fees. We'll all pay for that from our equipment budget. Our service contracts, and some of our, like our copiers, things like that, those are all on these. Software licenses, I don't know anything about computer things. You can ask David. I don't visibly have a meeting, but I do pay for them. So, software, and that's the important part. Software licenses that Kayla spends out of that. And then our branch, you all see this part, the branch equipment requests are what each branch needs for furniture or equipment as well. So equipment budget pretty straightforward. We pay for equipment. Friends of JMRL. So again, this is not our organization that you all probably, I don't think, does the board ever see the Friends budget? I'm not sure. But the Friends, each year we have a request that branch managers can send out and ask the Friends for resources, and that goes to supplement other programming. So the funding source is completely Friends of JMRL, not our internal money. Regional expenses, they pay for children's, young adult, and adult reference programs and incentives, and then each branch has discretionary spending for their own localized events, as well as programs and incentives as well. And so not our resources, but I thought it would be good for you all to know there is this great partner organization, right, Wendy, that helps us. That's what the book sale helps us with as well, to help our funding for programs. Federal aid, I think it's E-rate, yeah. Okay, so this comes from an appropriation from the Federal Communications Commission, and what our federal aid comes from is this thing called E-rate, and that is a reimbursement program where they help the FCC basically said they want to make broadband affordable to libraries and schools. That's how this thing got started. And so an appropriation, I think it's like 4.6 billion or something like that from the FEC to get this, or FCC, excuse me, to get these broadband services available to the public. So that is normally region-wide, and that's based on a reimbursement program. So well, until last year. So we normally pay up front, and then we submit this to the FCC, and then they reimburse us. This last time we were able to kind of do some split billing, and we only had to pay for the 20% upfront, and they paid, like we were able to bill them directly. So that was a new, we hadn't done that before, so that was great. So that's our federal aid. Oh, I can say this too. So we had a question.
Yeah.
Say what you're going to say, and then
Oh yeah, sure. Another thing, this is not FCC, but we had Arpa funding, which was it's COVID related, but I can't remember what the initials are.
American Rescue Protection Act.
There we go. And from the American Rescue Protection Act, we were able to get we got the, it's not phone booths. What are they? The privacy pods. No germs in here, space. So we were able to get some privacy pods out of that. And then what else do we?
Lockers. And then networking equipment. We got some switches, new switches and
There we go.
routers.
And those are all improvements that were made out of the funding that we got from COVID. So, and then Mike.
So as you're going, part of what I'm doing is thinking about the flip side. You're talking about sources and where they go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about expenses and how different pieces of the puzzle get
Sure.
paid for. Is it the case that is aside from the, so I think what I'm hearing, and I just wanted to see if I'm understanding it correctly. We can apply for some specific targeted grants, which were the privacy pod and the networking switches and so forth. And then is that basically our internet bill? Our overall internet bill, is that again, it sounds like it's a targeted program that we're able to apply for and get 80% of that. And is there any other federal aid that goes into a general fund or anything like that. It sounds like it's all targeted programs, but this in particular is one that sort of sounds like it's kind of stable that we're able to kind of count on every year.
Yeah. The E-rate funding has two categories that you can apply for. One is the broadband funding, as you mentioned. So that's what AJ described. And so you assume that's there year after year. We just have to apply for it, follow certain rules. For example, the filtering of the public internet, you have to filter it, and you have to be able to take that filter off at patron request in order to be eligible for this. So there are things that we have to do in order to be eligible. The second part of that category 2 funding is for equipment, and it's only really networking equipment. This started off, you used to be able to get phone lines from E-rate as well, but they've dropped that. It's no longer an option here. The ARPA funding that AJ mentioned, that was very limited here, and now it's gone basically. And we got our grants from the state library. JMRL didn't receive any direct ARPA aid. The state did, and we applied to them for it. So from the federal funding that we know specifically for libraries, this is the big one. They also grant directly to the states, and the states use that money to pay for our state aid. Yes.
So I had a question too. I know that in the past, many years ago, we got direct grants to place the computers in the public access labs in the branches. How is that funded now, the replacement of those machines?
Did you hear me, Tony? Equipment budget.
Okay. That's what I thought. I want to make sure. Thank you. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, that has been the case as long as I remember, that it's been JMRL's equipment budget. The original computers that came in, Tony, were from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
That's what I recall. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right?
This will go over budget reporting. Here's what I make available to all of you all. Fiscal 23 budget is available publicly to everyone. If you, that's just so people know how to get it, but if you click on that D. Maybe.
Hey, Bill. Question before you get
Yes.
there. In your original slide, you said something about grants as well, but.
No, so as I was saying, we normally do grants on a program by program basis. So I don't have too many examples to give you. But when you do get grants, it comes before the board because you'll have to approve to accept them.
But those are usually one-offs also. No?
Correct.
Unlike, for example, this federal.
Correct, right. So
So
I'm
that's
covering
part
what
one
is
line.
more consistent funding for JMRL, and the grants are case by case, but you will see those too. So yes, so this is the budget, which you all love and know and right, you have it all memorized. Is that just me? Okay. Do you just scroll up just a little bit? So the top is the jurisdictional costs. Like I was saying, based on circulation use, you can see the percentages at the top, and then below is the by branch, depending on what it takes to run each specific jurisdiction's branch. If you go, we won't do this now, but if you go further through the budget, it's broken out by branch. So you can see here's how much it costs for my branch, and then that's all if you go further down. Yep. And if you go all the way to the bottom, after each branch is listed, is the equipment budget that you all approve as well. So you can have your eyes on it. There it is. And so each week, or not each week, that'd be great. That's me. Each week is me. Each year, y'all. Each year, you all approve this. And then I prepare budget reports for you guys every month. So mine are these two, the monthly equipment funds. I'd say here's what we've spent, here's what the library spent in equipment. And then I also do an itemized list of the actual equipment parts of those. So not like you all don't see the credit card fees or the collection fees, but you do see the actual equipment that is purchased, and that's itemized right here. And then I also do the operating budget, and that is there. So you'll see all of our salaries and our operating expenses, and you all get those every single month. So if you ever want to know where we are or how we're keeping track, those are in your report, or I don't know if they're handouts, but they're definitely posted here on your page.
One lovely thing that AJ has done is monthly, he tells us the percent of the fiscal year and then how much we have spent for both salaries and other operating expenses. So at any given point, you can look at the bottom and say, oh, we have spent 26% of our operating budget for the year, and we are 13.8% of the way through our salaries and benefits. Now it's a bit misleading because we pay some things up front.
Right.
You know, but you can really look at that and see where we are throughout the fiscal year. Lifesaver.
And I don't know what else I have. Oh, budget cycle is probably next. Yes, okay, one more.
Before you get to the cycle, question about the materials budget. How is that allocated among branches? And sort of related, does our collections manager make collections decisions for on behalf of all branches, or is some of that sort of delegated down and sort of a sub budget maybe per branch? Yeah, give me a picture of that.
So I'll take that because
the only part I don't control.
David's responsible for that overall line, and then he hands it to Meredith basically, who is the overall responsibility along with Kayla. Kayla has the overall responsibility, but Meredith does a lot of the overall work there. And in general, they set a budget in the beginning of the year using a set of software that we use, our integrated library system, that says here's how much we're going to spend in each of about 50 different categories, right? And most of them are regional. They're not like Crozet's large print and Scottsville's large print. Is just large print. And within that, we have a formula that's in our collection management plan that says, in general, you know, these branches get this many copies of books, and then it trickles down. And they do a good job, she and Sierra, of looking at the budget to make sure that we're appropriately allocating that per. Children's manager and young adult manager manage their lines within that overall budget. Right. Each branch has a branch discretionary fund, which is the items that are selected have to meet our material selection policy, but they don't have to be decided by Meredith or Tim or Angela. That branch has money throughout the year where they can just put a cart directly into a vendor and it just gets ordered. So if there's something that they feel like they're lacking in an area, or, you know, programs coming up there, they want to supplement, they can get something of local interest there.
And just very broadly, what kind of percentage of the materials budget overall is discretionary among all the branches versus handled?
It's a small percent. I don't know what it is, if that, yeah, because the overall materials budget is over $800,000 as AJ mentioned. So I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I'm happy to look it up.
I'm looking for
We've had
qualitative.
Sure, yeah. Meredith has come in and done a presentation about those very issues before for the board, so we could certainly have one of those again at some point in the future.
Great, thank you.
Okay, last thing is the budget cycle, and that is also under, you know, this is under your document, full library board meeting and budget cycle, also publicly available. And so the budget cycle is basically everything not goal. So if it's not up to me, I would go. All right, so department managers and department and branch managers submit to David and I. Then personnel committee meets early October. November budget committee meets. So fall is all budget development time. And then early November is when the board actually confirms and says this is the budget that we think is going to be great. Then David goes and he shops it around to the different jurisdictional partners. And then early in the year, there we go, deadline comes for submitting the budgets to the jurisdictions. Then as soon as like the operation budget is done, then we start immediately on the equipment budget. We have a different cycle for that. Around February, they'll submit things to myself and David, and we'll continue to go through, you know, here's what we think we're going to need for those budgets. At the same time, David's working with the jurisdictional partners to get the operating budget approved. And then after we get the equipment budget done, then I start working on the Friends budget. It's like the longest budget. You know. And so then we do Friends, and we have to send it to Friends to see if they approve that. And then sometime in June, it all comes together, I promise. And then you all vote to say this is going to be the budget for the next fiscal year. So we start in September and we end in June. Breathe for 2 months and then start the party again.
So right now, AJ and I have received the staff requests for operational additions for next fiscal year. So the personnel committee will need to meet in the next 2 to 3 weeks to kind of look at those and rank them. And then we will present those to the full board next month in October. And then the budget committee needs to get together to approve a budget based on that. And then you all vote. So just to tie it into what you all need to do there, that's the next few months, basically. It's a very compressed timeline here.
Okay, I think that is my time. What questions do you still have to know?
Thank you, AJ. That's great.
Thanks,
I mean,
Tony.
questions? Any other questions for AJ?
Do you do an estimate? So for 2023, do you use the 2022 numbers of how many people are checking out books? And then do you redo that at some point? Or how do you work that with the budget? Because we're saying that, you know, Albemarle needs to pay this much because this many people are using the library.
So how do they get the cert numbers? Is that what you're
Yeah,
asking?
well, when do they use them? So are we estimating until we have a final number and then telling them a final number? Or you just have to say, it was last year and
We use a 3-year average, basically, of the last 3 full fiscal years. So, and the budget that we're working on now, and again, that's on Kayla to give those numbers to Donna Lee, who does the personnel end, and to AJ. But so she's already got them because they ended in June. It's basically an average of the last 3 fiscal years.
okay.
And that's by design so that there's no one event would dramatically impact any individual jurisdiction. So for example, Nelson added a brand new collection to the brand new library down there. And so that sees there's a spike in usage there. And there's a 3-year average in order to try to kind of pace that out rather than all at once in a given year saying like, oh, your numbers went way up, or like COVID is another example of a dramatic event that this hopefully will help smooth out a little bit.
Okay.
And that's in Kayla's report, which is also on that handouts page. She has the monthly statistics and the annual statistics for every branch and jurisdiction that goes up every month. So you can see what the situation.
No, I was just curious because you must have to have something solid, or else how could you move forward? You know, be like, oh, wait, we don't have to spike.
So usually we have all the information that we need in order to put together a fiscal year 24 budget around this point. Some things are estimates. Of course, AJ looks at operational costs and he'll try to figure out, for this, can we use the 3-year average of the cost of gas, or do we need to take into account the fact that gas is much more expensive, those types of decisions. But the things that we usually are waiting on are numbers on what our older retirement plan is going to cost annually and what our medical costs are going to be annually. And we get both of those from the city of Charlottesville, who we contract to provide those benefits. So as they are working on their budget cycle, we've already been in touch to talk about when we will get those. So those are the numbers that we get kind of later in the process that can dramatically impact what JMRL's costs are.
One more thing that I think has come up in the past that maybe David or AJ can address is the siloing of these budget categories. It's not as if we're delinquent in one category. Can we move money from another category? In most cases, and this is why, correct me if I'm wrong, the money in these categories stays in those categories and cannot be moved around.
That we follow what's in the regional agreement, Tony, which says like, this money gets used for this money gets used for that. The board can make a motion basically to make a change from what was budgeted, which we have done in the past, where it's operational costs will be spent to buy some equipment if it looks like there's going to be an overage in operational costs. So staff can't do any of those things, but this board can make a change to the budget. Staff cannot make any purchase or change over $10,000 without board approval. So if it was a $9,000 something that we needed, I could make that decision, but anything more than that would need the full board's approval.
Great. Thank you, David.
Wendy?
I just had a question. I know the schedule that we always get for the budget, but is it online?
Yes.
I'm if you don't mind.
It's on the about page. If you
Go back one.
Oh, with the budget, I bet.
So if you go onto the about page, about tab, click. Oops, sorry, it's okay. Click about JMRL, and then you'll see full library board meeting and budget schedule. Click on that document; it'll pull up that PDF that just.
down in the bottom right. I'll send this presentation out as well for you all. So Wendy, it's
all the way at the bottom on the right. There you go, full library,
Oh, okay.
and that'll show you the.
One page back. Yeah.
this also is useful for you all to know when we're traveling for board meetings or whatnot. It's listed there as well.
All right. AJ, thank you very, very much.
Thank you, AJ. Watch your feet.
Thank you for doing that. Not just the presentation, but all the work I meant, you know. In addition,
In addition to.
that was an extra class.
Next up on the agenda, committee appointments and reports. I think first is a technology committee report. Technology committee met last week.
Thank you. Yeah, this was my first meeting with the technology committee. Thank you very much, Michael, and to everybody else there for walking me through so much. I feel like a lot of it was kind of getting up to speed. We also were introduced to Michael Odin, our new, help me with the job title.
Supervising Technology Services Library.
Thank you very much.
I
Roll off the top.
And he's taking over a lot of what's been going on lately with Monticello Avenue, which was sort of the first thing that we discussed, some changes going on there, both to the computer lab and to the server hosting. They're in the process of migrating servers, not just the public website, but the staff intranet and a lot of the sort of background stuff as well. That process was getting close to being done when we were talking about that a couple of weeks ago. Is it now? What was the date I had on there?
I believe Friday of last week is the date that we said last week.
Yeah.
I haven't heard an update.
We had a discussion about technology goals in the 5-year plan, which we expect to take a look at and update. This is a committee that's met previously about once a year, and we talked about increasing that. I think we're going to have one more meeting in December and then look at maybe 3 meetings in the following calendar. Work through some of the amount of stuff that's coming up. The other big point of discussion that we had was about the beta version of the website, which is sort of, I guess, by now in kind of a soft launch phase. Is that what we're calling it, Dave?
It has been available for people to view for a long time now. So it's at beta.jmrl.org if anyone wants to look at it. But it's still, after this migration, we're looking at a period of internal design review and potentially looking for other outside feedback before we officially make a switch, so that when you go to jmrl.org, it points there.
Thank you.
And we wanted the board technology committee to take a look at that closer to finished product before we launched it.
Michael, David, anything I've left off the table there? Okay, then that was about it then. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you. Next up is a report from the library name working group.
Yes, this group continues to work on a survey for library staff with the hope to get it released on the all staff training day on Monday, October 10th. And organizing meetings to invite experts to discuss background and process advice with the working group to be recorded and available live via Zoom for the public. So that's where the working group currently stands.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions about either of those two reports?
What are they calling the survey?
It's a staff survey. We don't have a.
Oh, it's in
We'll come up with something, you know. That's
Let's
on the
make
agenda.
it really complicated and hard to remember.
Yeah, it's going to be as easy to remember as technology services
It's not an
supervisor.
acronym.
And David, I assume you're going to talk about the in-service day when you get to the director's report. So we'll.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Good news, great news. The Virginia Library Association has awarded JMRL their Library of the Year award. And David, would you like to
Thank you.
elucidate on that? Clarify that?
Yeah, so congratulations to the library board, whose leadership during COVID and the centennial of the local public library allowed for the excellent work of staff to shine through. We heard from so many patrons over the last few years about what a lifeline library services were for them. So it's very nice to be recognized for that for library staff. The award specifically mentions the centennial display at the Central Library on the 3rd floor, which is a semi-permanent display. So it's up for the foreseeable future for anybody to come visit. And the rest of the Centennial Project. So JMRL couldn't have done this without our great friend Lorenzo Dickerson, a local filmmaker who put together the film Free and Open to the Public.
Mhm.
The Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society, who did the research and the production of the display that's up at the third floor of Central, and the support of the Friends of the Library as well, who funded those programs. So personally, I'm mostly very happy for the staff who have worked so hard to meet families where they are during the last few years. The award ceremony is in Norfolk at the annual Virginia Library Association meeting on October 19th. So far, I have heard yeses from Mike and Alita for attendance, and I need to nail those down this week as they're going to stop selling the tickets for that. So I will arrange for banquet tickets for anyone who is interested in attending from the library board. You just need to let me know as soon as possible, hopefully by the end of the day tomorrow.
What was that date again?
It is October 19th,
19. What time?
6 p.m. I'm pretty
6 p.m. Thank
Well
you, Mike.
done.
I was just poking with the schedule
Yeah,
yesterday.
There you
and
go.
it is in
Norfolk.
Norfolk, so that's not exactly the after work drive.
Okay.
But I think tomorrow, if you're gonna stay at the hotel, you'd have to get your bid in, because that's when it closes for the $150.
Thank you.
The registration, the hotel
Thank
discount
you.
for the conference.
Right,
Thank you, Alita. I didn't realize that was a deadline.
yeah.
So, and
I think it's
for
tomorrow.
conference training and conference travel, the board is authorized for reimbursement from JMRL for costs. So such as the cost of the dinner and the cost of the hotel. And if you wanted to attend the Virginia Library Association conference too, we certainly would encourage that. So congratulations to JMRL.
That's great.
Wonderful.
Get to say things.
Lisa would like to say something.
I would like to say thank you very much to David.
Mm,
I
you're
would
welcome.
like to say that I certainly don't feel like this is for me. I feel like this is for, I think it's us, obviously, but it is also, we have to acknowledge, I think, the kind of courageous leadership that's required to steer a ship in a pandemic like this that has never happened before in our lifetime. And I think to do not just excellent service, period, but it also shows that excellent service can remain afloat during times of great disturbance. And that is the thing that keeps people coming back. It shows how much your dedication has helped to keep the doors open, but also to remind all of us about how much this means to us. And I really hope that you take a chance as you are dishing out credit to everybody else, which is what you want a leader to do, right? You don't want the leader that's like, shut up, y'all, this is my award. Like, that's not what you want, but it's also nowhere near in your leadership style. And I just find myself very grateful for someone who has such a clear vision and such passion, such ethics. And I really appreciate you, and it has been an honor to work with you. And I am so happy for this award, because this is just, to me, one little thing to show how great I think our system is and how you in particular have gotten us there. So thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa.
I might add, he is homegrown.
Yeah, that part, Gordon Avenue.
It is in my nature to deflect that all and to not take the compliment, but I will take it. Thank you.
You gotta
very much.
practice, you gotta practice.
All right. Thank you. All right. Next is first reading of the amended policy 1.21, the bylaws.
So Tony, if you don't mind, can I point out what the changes are?
Please, because I'm not sure I remember.
They're in red. But the main thing is that there was a section that was added in 2019, largely crafted by Mike, thank you, Mike, to allow for some remote participation by the library board, which now has to be revised based on the state law and the new policy that you all voted on last month. So now the new section 6 just says remote participation is allowed under the conditions set forth in JMRL's library board remote participation policy.
Very clear.
I believe that was the only change. So rather than get into anything else that's in the bylaws, yes. That was the only change, just to clarify that we have an existing policy now to address that.
All right, and as usual, that was our first reading, so that we will not actually vote on this at this meeting, but we will take a vote at the October meeting, I believe, if that's correct. Hearing no disagreement, I'll take that as a yes.
I guess you didn't hear it.
I didn't hear it, no.
No.
Okay.
All right. So are we moving on? Yes.
Yes.
All right. The next up is the fiscal year 24 budget objectives. So fiscal year 24, I always like to remind folks, is actually 2023-2024. And David, would you like to lead this discussion?
Sure. So as AJ mentioned, we are already working on the fiscal year 24 budget. There are some of the deadlines that are not in or the only deadline really that is not in the board schedule that AJ shared with you, is that by October 15th, I'm to meet with representatives from each jurisdiction to talk about planning for next year's budget. So usually it's a matter of JMRL saying, here are the things that we're looking at for next year, and the jurisdiction saying, well, here are the things we're looking at, here's where our revenues are now, expect this or expect that. So it's a very productive meeting every year, but it's good to have these priorities in place beforehand. So here are some suggestions for the library board. We are entering year 2 of JMRL's minimum wage adjustment plan. So we're currently in year 1 of July of 2022 through June of 2023. And this is the year at which JMRL is paying 2/3 of the costs. So next year, the plan all along had been for JMRL to pay 1/3 and the jurisdiction to pay 2/3. Currently this year, they're paying 1/3. So I think it would be good for the board to support that and to work with our jurisdictional partners to make sure they understand here's where we are in that process. And it's not just a done deal. We were able to raise minimum wages at the bottom of our pay scale, but it's an ongoing thing. I'm always interested in securing funding for a cost of living compensation increase for library staff because we are seeing, increased competition for good library workers everywhere across the board, not just in the state, but nationally. And then finally, secure funding for expansion of Bookmobile and outreach services to jurisdictions that have expressed potential interest in these services. So over the last few years, some trustees and I have talked to either elected officials or staff from various non-Charlottesville Albemarle jurisdictions about the potential to have more outreach in their region. By the regional agreement, the outreach is contracted separately. So Charlottesville and Albemarle pay a separate line item in the budget for Bookmobile and outreach services. We have had requests to come back with some numbers for what that would cost for other jurisdictions. So this is a little bit misleading here. So I'm asking the board to consider this as a priority, but it is also very much an a la carte thing where the jurisdictions can look at it and they can make a yes or no decision. If they decide not to do it, it's not going to impact the rest of their services or funding. It would just be not this year, maybe in the future. So as we're working on next year's budget, Tony, those are the 3 priorities that have kind of begun to take shape.
And will we be seeing at the October meeting suggestions from the branch managers and staff on potential budget requests, David?
Yes, those are into staff now. So I will take them to the personnel committee to prioritize. And then the personnel committee and I will present a prioritized list, a suggested prioritized list to the full board in October.
Thank you. Thank you. Discussion around these budget priorities. Folks have questions and comments, suggestions?
I think I have no problems with these 3 as they sit there. The sort of elephant in the room to me that I see as I think about prior conversations we have is capital improvement funding, which, kind of like number 3 really falls more at the jurisdictional level than at the regional level. But and I recognize also isn't something that we're necessarily looking for funding in fiscal year 24 in. I just think it's hard for a lot of these jurisdictions to sort of, you have to move 2 feet forward at the same time in some cases. And so I kind of don't want to lose track of making sure that we're also having that conversation where it needs to be had about, putting bookmarks in for the big projects that we know are coming as that goes through. But to these 3, I see no real problems.
I think that's a good point, Thomas. It never hurts to remind the jurisdictions that just because you built facilities, doesn't mean that those facilities are going to live forever. And there's a certain cost involved, obviously, with upkeep, but at some point you have to think about, is this serving the needs of the jurisdictions, or do we need to think about a larger capital improvement project?
And these, to be clear, these are solely operational recommendations. So
Right, right.
most jurisdictions consider those things separately and maybe even on separate timelines. So we're working parallel tracks here, but certainly we could put it in the board's budget priorities to say, hey, don't forget about capital needs, because there are capital needs everywhere.
I mean, or if we specify this as board operating budget priorities and look to make a similar document for our capital budget priorities, that maybe covers a fiscal 24 to 29 window or something like, something a little bit broader. But,
A place that we have done that in the past is in the strategic plan.
yeah.
But we could certainly pull those out from the strategic plan and say, hey, don't forget we're talking
That
about.
would be useful to kind of
Yeah.
crystallize it in a separate document, similar to this one.
But I think part of what I'm picking up on here is, I think you're identifying, we do have this kind of, of course, we can pick up the phone and call jurisdictions at any old time, but we have this sort of structured time when we're meeting with them to review stuff, as you said, operational stuff, but it might not hurt to, hey, by the way, here's some things we want to kind of keep our eye on. I think that's a good point.
I do think that the tricky thing there is going to be that those are so jurisdictionally specific. Different members of the board will probably see things differently based on,
I think staff, similar to what you just said, Mike, staff take every opportunity to try and make sure that's part of the conversation, but I think it would be more useful as a cohesive whole for the board as well. When we get together on that timeline, there's a time in which most of you will sit down with me and somebody, and that's the chance to also advocate for the needs.
That's the forum that I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Okay, good feedback. Thank you, Tom.
Other questions, comments on this priorities as we go forward? As David and AJ have mentioned, the budget season never really ends. It just recycles. So, okay. Let's see. Next up, old business. A vote on policy 4.235, suggestions and complaints.
So we did have a first reading previously. The red and blue aren't going to help you a lot because this is sort of a rewrite. Maybe if you just scroll it briefly, that was the current. And then if you scroll down, the black in the proposed draft is not, doesn't mean that it would. Usually, a lot of times it means that's a leftover from the previous, but in this case, it's sort of a rewrite that follows the same track. But we wanted to tweak up the tone a little bit. The first red line in the second paragraph, we wanted to be kind of give people a little bit more of an expectation about what might happen with their feedback, and is it anonymous or does it go out and where does it live? A little bit of clue in the third paragraph about how we make this available to you to get feedback to us. And then we've got the boilerplate about reconsideration. So that's just a review from some things we sort of introduced last month. So if there's any questions, I can take any other questions or discussion. Yes.
I had a question about submitted on paper. Is there a form that's available, or does someone meant to just have an issue to paper and turn it in?
There's a form.
So I wonder if there's a way, might it be useful to have form that indicates that there is a process in place. And when you say requests for additions to the library collection can also be submitted using our form,
Yeah.
or, you know, something
We
like
have
that.
that in the last paragraph there, using JMRL form for a different one. I
Well,
mean,
that's a
but-
different thing.
Yeah, right, but that's what I'm saying, you know.
Just-
I kind of agree with Lisa there. Let's like mimic.
You're talking
that same
about
language up
this,
here.
this red sentence?
No, not the whole sentence. Everything is fine,
Uh-huh.
except that phrase,
Mhm.
submitted on paper. That was the thing. I was just trying to figure out how would someone know? You know what I mean? Like, I understand, I love the idea of written feedback at the site versus online stuff you can do elsewhere, but that device, that vehicle, like, do I bring my own paper? Are there forms I can pick up? Like,
Yeah.
I love
that-
paper, so I'm not trying to say no paper. I just want to find out which paper.
And could that just be, you know,
Via paper form?
no, I would say use the same language we have in the last paragraph there, say, can be submitted using JMRL form.
Using JMRL form.
And then colon whatever the form
Does
is.
anybody know the number?
We'll find out.
Or the appropriate form or
Right.
whatever, something like that, just so we know. Because what I like about it is that it's clearly very open. We want to hear from people. We want to know if you have feedback or requests or whatever. I just didn't want someone looking at this and saying, well, we gotta go bring our paper up there.
Or to ask, I have a piece of paper. Oh, I'm sorry. Submitted on a form that can be obtained from the circulation desk.
A form from circulation, yes, that the library provides, yeah, wherever it happens to be.
And the current policy states every library location has to have a box.
Mm.
So not only do we all have forms, but everybody has a box as well.
Well, this sentence was, the intent was to try and make a distinction between general feedback and the specific collections.
Yes.
This one has a
Yes,
box too. So
yes.
that was a-
The collections.
And it might just say via, can be submitted on paper via JMRL form, blah, 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 blah. Submitted on paper via the form. Like, we make it easy for you. We have a form here. You don't have to get paper out of your car. So, yeah,
I think if Krista can come up with the number for that, then that sounds great. So I think she just ran to go get a form.
My other question, why is 424 on there twice? Is the number and then the reconsideration?
Either of these have a number on them.
feedback form, yeah, via the JMRL feedback form.
That's
It doesn't have a number?
Nope.
Should we number it?
usually the number is the same as
I know the
the
policy.
policy that it's associated with, so we can renumber them. You want to reprint all this form?
not?
We have a budget.
I have a pen.
But I wonder if there's, David, this is a feedback form that you're looking at.
Yeah.
Again,
Oh, this
this is the material selection. This is suggest a purchase, basically, the paragraph we're talking about. So I want to,
So which form would someone use then to access?
This one to give general feedback, this one to say buy this book.
oh, so you do have both of them.
I've done this.
They do it.
Now, is that form on, the electronic?
Yes.
Yeah,
It does have on the website as well.
Unless you're like Lisa and you like.
I love paper. I think I filled this out, bringing back old memories.
Here's procedure
And they got your
4.14 book suggestion form.
We'll have a quote on there from Lisa.
It's wonderful.
The one in your,
So I think that's the number 4.14. It's not on the form, yeah, so that's not super useful, but to Lisa's point, it lets people know that there
We
is
have a form, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
oh, it does say it on the very top there, the header.
Yeah, 414.
Yeah.
That's not the
Not
paper
the
one that
paper.
we're giving out.
I'll write it.
All right.
Same information, right? The
It
same
is, yep.
information?
I believe so.
Oh, well, even the book purchase. doesn't have a number on it either.
It doesn't what?
The book. doesn't have a form number on it.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, but then you're saying it's gonna be.
So next time we print those, we'll have the formatting. Oh, okay.
Like that.
And might you want to like I guess this might, if we're doing revisions, like rather than book purchase form, maybe materials purchase form, because it's not just books. That
For the
people might,
form itself.
because like the
Yeah.
form has other things on there. It says that there's
Yeah.
other things you can do.
And we get a fair amount of those, but if you look at
What else are
the,
people getting? I can
online
ask
one.
for books. Tell me.
if you look at the audiobooks, they want, catalog, yeah, suggested purchase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one has a lot more flexibility for, please select a format,
Yeah.
so, and not to put you on the spot, but what do you think the percentage is between paper versus electronic?
They're mostly electronic. I think I get maybe 5 paper forms a month, maybe.
Wow.
Everything else electronic.
And they're all from Lisa.
So I think to answer Lisa's general question, there is a number. Okay.
We're not saying don't have a computer at home, you can't use a form. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's all-
Exactly, yeah.
So that would read then, the change would be request for additions to the library collection can also be submitted via JMRL's form 4.14 at each location or electronically.
I think that clarifies it a little bit.
There was, I believe everybody got feedback that we got from a member of the public about this policy as well. And there were 2 major points that just should be touched on. One, they felt that adding feedback was redundant, that suggestions and complaints were already feedback. And they wanted to make sure it was clear that patrons can use these forms in order to provide positive feedback as well. So just to throw it out there that the board did get that
Yeah, I
public
did.
feedback.
And part of my thinking there is what you hinted at is the word feedback encompasses both positive and negative.
Yes.
Yep. Are we voting on this month? Or are we making
Could
changes?
be.
Could be, okay.
Wait, one last thing. What do you
Okay.
think about adding after JMRL's form, saying what the form is? Just because the form currently doesn't have a number, so people couldn't find it by 414, but they might find it by request to purchase. So could it say JMRL's form number, blah, blah, blah? JMRL's request to purchase form number 414. Suggest the
Well,
purchase.
suggested purchase is what it says on the website.
What does it say on the paper?
Well, it says suggestion for book purchase, and I was about to suggest to David, I bet David would rather have it just say suggest a purchase.
Yeah.
All right, then do you still capitalize the F in form, English professor?
Yeah, I do. Well, shoot, now you put me on the spot, I guess.
And then we didn't call out this form 4.24 by name in the bottom.
Well, that's their problem. Let's just keep it. I want to know where I can get my
We've spent enough
form.
time for 4 paper
Yeah.
forms.
Yeah. Honestly,
Yeah,
Priorities, this form is
that's all I need. I got my personal clarity. I'm ready to move on.
and I like putting the hyphens and suggest a purchase because it sounds like a widget, so that's good. I like that.
I think that phrase, the suggested purchase, does make it more clear what you mean when you're talking about additions to the library collection. That might be a little-
Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
So I think that adds clarity there.
Do I hear a motion to amend the policy 4.235?
Hope that we amend this policy.
yeah. Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? All right, next policy we want to take a look at is 4.221 library card eligibility.
How come this got so many decimals? Michael, do you revise this form a lot?
No, but we are talking about a hypothetical, a mythical reorg of the whole manual, which will involve some numbering. So let me
Get our voting arms ready.
let me ask if we could visit that during that effort. This was read last month, and the main changes are there's a discussion of eligibility for cards and fees. Since this was original or last revised. We have a new offering of teacher cards. So, and those, there's a fee-based implication with those, I think, meaning that they're don't carry fees. And so we wanted to put that in the policy to make sure it's that we're being consistent there. And then sort of in the last paragraph, internet access is covered in another policy. So we just sort of took that out here. And then a little bit of tweaking for tone again, and then just kind of clarifying that minors are eligible for cards in various respects, but there's somebody that's responsible for that, or sort of sponsors is signed for their application. Those are the main changes.
Any questions or comments on that? Discussion of? If not, do I hear a motion to amend policy 4.221 as we've discussed?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. That is amended. And thanks to Mike and the policy committee again for bird dogging those. All right. Believe we are to the library director's report. Is he here?
I'm here. A few things to report today. Hold lockers, which we've been talking about for a long time, are up everywhere that is getting them. So that's every branch except for Central and North Side. The hold lockers are up everywhere but Gordon and Crozet. I have a great picture. I wish I'd have thought of that. We took a great picture of Ophelia outside the Louisa Library holding a book. Check it out. Gordons and Crozets are coming this week. Kayla Payne has done just an excellent job of managing this. You wouldn't believe the hoops that this thing has gone through. Crozet is double sized, so this is our biggest one there. Two of them shipped damaged and had to be returned, so that's led to some delays here. We are under soft launch now, and then we'll do a larger PR push when all 6 are up and running. We're doing some targeted PR in Louisa, who was the first one to go up, because they also got the privacy pod, so it's kind of 2 new things to tell the public about. The staff at the Nelson Memorial Library are holding an open house next Tuesday, 10/4, from 10 to 2, and it's to celebrate 50 years of library service to the people of Nelson there. So if anybody is interested and has not seen the beautifully redone Nelson Memorial Library, that's a good chance to get in and have a snack.
What day did you say that?
It's 10 to 2 on October 4th, which is Tuesday. JMRL has exited our COVID response plan. So we are no longer in the tiered system that we have been in for 2.5 years here.
Oh, yes.
AJ is applauding. At this point, the main concern and documentation for staff is about staff who themselves have COVID or have an exposure, someone in their household that has COVID. So we're no longer tracking daily data for the region, which we had been doing. All that has always been available through the VDH and the Blue Ridge Health District. We are offering and have been offering full services for quite some time. So special thanks to the Staff Emergency Planning Committee, who've worked tirelessly over the last 2.5 years to walk a tightrope between staff safety and public service. They've earned a break and they're going to return to their normal duties of planning for other major catastrophes. We've kept all the documentation and archived it all for staff should we ever find that we need it again. Knock on wood. So everything is up there. I think that's available for you all to see on the staff intranet as well. As I told staff, I think the most important thing that the EPC did based on staff suggestions was to open up an anonymous feedback form where anybody could put in, any staff member could put in their thoughts about the COVID response plan. And it really was a useful tool to help balance service versus safety. So congrats to staff for being out of COVID response for now. Ask Ginny about this after the meeting if you like, but you might see some news about a chapter of the Dolly Parton Imagination Library starting up in Greene County. The local Greene County Friends of the Library is serving as the required 501c3 fundraising body. So you have to have, in order to get this program, you have to have a 501c3 that will fundraise for it. that this has been incentivized by the state of Virginia, which is now picking up half the tab for a Dolly Parton Imagination Library. And this means that all children under 5 in Greene County are eligible to have a book a month mailed to their home once it gets off the ground. So we are working in support. This is not a JMRL thing, although Jenny is very closely involved with her friends group and has been able to help them out there. So Ginny and the library have been working with the Greene County Friends to promote this service, and they have already successfully raised funds to keep this going for the first 2 years, I believe, right? More like 5 years. So they've had a tremendous outpouring from this program. They're working very closely with Linda Harrell from Quick Start Tennis, who has worked tirelessly on this around the region. So in Charlottesville, Albemarle, the Boys and Girls Club already has a Dolly Parton Imagination Library, so that's available there. If individuals in Louisa and in Nelson were interested in chapters there, we'd have to identify a local 501c3 that would be interested in taking this on. So staff have been talking about that as well. It's a big project that some nonprofit has to agree to take over. And the library can support as best as we can, but we cannot raise the funds for it. We mentioned the All Staff Training Day, formerly known as In-Service Day. The Staff Training Committee has decided that nobody knows what In-Service Day means. It's now the All Staff Training Day. It's going to be on Monday, 10/10. All JMRL branches will be closed for that day, and staff will be reporting to downtown Charlottesville. The morning is going to be in the new code building at the end of the mall next to the Omni down there. It's where the Same Page event was earlier this year. So we're going to have some coffee and some chatting and some blabbering on from me. And then we're very excited that Jocelyn Johnson, local friend of the library and author of My Monticello, is going to come talk to library staff. Lunch and sessions will be in the afternoon at the Central Library. Trustees are always invited to this event. If anybody is interested and is also interested in lunch, let me know, and we will get lunch is coming from Roots Cafe on the corner. They're delivering box bowl lunches.
Oh, I love Roots. That's like my favorite.
And a final note, just following up on a question from trustees a while ago when Brittany Eversberg was here talking about the teacher cards that Mike mentioned in the library card eligibility policy. That information has been updated to include homeschool families that homeschool inside JMRL service area. So there were a few kinks to work out there. They're all worked out, and those are now available. And that is all I have to report, Tony.
Any, you know me, I have to ask, are there any remote options available for what the event formerly known as In-Service Day?
Unfortunately, we are not looking at remote options for live streaming of it. Where we can, we will record some of the sessions and make them available for staff or trustees to view after the fact. I think that means nothing in the code building in the morning, though.
And we can't get the coffee and pastries mailed to us either.
I'll bring them to you that morning if you'd like.
Thank
coffee.
you. Okay, good.
I think I'm closer to you than Tony, so you can swing by me first.
All right, thank you, David. Other matters? We're to that point in the agenda.
I just have one thing I want to mention. This is my every 2 years point of order that I just keep the information up to date. We operate, in fact, we have bylaws today in our handouts on page 7 under the Roberts Rule for small meeting rules. And just the technicality of that, as I understand it, is those rules allow for motions but don't involve second. And so just something to we have a kind of a natural tendency to want to make seconds because it's a normal thing to do and you want to show support for what's happening. But the only reason I pointed out is a process thing. I would never want to get to some situation down the road where, hey, we need a second. No, we don't. Oh, we always did it that way. I just like to do it the way that we say every time, just avoid any sort of possible thing in the future. So just a reminder for everyone.
Thank you, Mike, for pointing out. I'm trying to remember to do that, and I appreciate being reminded that you forgot to do that. That's good. Thank you. I just had one thing I wanted to say. I want to thank everybody for their perseverance in allowing me to continue to attend remotely while the rest of you are making the effort to come to a meeting in person. I really do appreciate it. So, other matters that we need to talk about?
Everybody back here, actually, very nice.
I'm kind of
And,
envious
and
of,
you as well on the
I'm
screen.
kind of envious of your position in the mountains.
It's always sunset.
There you go. That's right.
I know, like, that
Wonder he doesn't want to come here. Look where he is.
All right, future agenda items for October. Sure, the budget will be in there.
There should be a vote on the bylaws.
Correct.
All right.
Vote on the bylaws that we, policy 1.21 that we talked about today. There'll be presentations from, on the budget from the staff recommendations from the Personnel Committee. I assume.
And also there'll be a policy committee as well, so reports from both the policy and the personnel committee meetings.
All right. Any other agenda items?
Let me ask for that right now. Yeah.
If not, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next month, if not before.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Congratulations again.